I was just rewatching Peter Jackson's 2004 adaptation of King Kong, which I think is one of the coolest films, certainly one of the coolest scripts that's ever been adapted into a film, I think. And one of the coolest remakes for sure. Remakes, reboots, whatever. But kind of like what I was talking about in my podcast that I was recording earlier today, it touches on, Peter Jackson definitely touches on that idea of reality and fiction and reality and art, especially reality and artistic narrative blending and how they affect one another. And this is especially seen in the main character, I think, Miss Darrow. What does Jack Black's character say, who's the filmmaker, producer guy? When he sees her, he's like, and when I saw you, I knew. She's like, what do you know? And he's like, I always knew. You were the one. Like, she was literally born for this role. That's even in the dialogue when he first bumps into Miss Darrow or whatever. And then there's the similar idea with, I forget the name of the character, but there's like the kid who's like the deckhand, the stowaway that Mr. Hayes raised aboard the ship, right? And he's reading, I forget the name of the book in the film. I don't think it's necessarily important, but you can tell with the reading of it, especially as they find the island, there's this real moment of, this is what's brilliant about this kind of filmmaking, because it's like it's in the dialogue and it's unfolding in real time in the characters' quote unquote real lives for the characters, right? And it's thematically playing out on the grander tertiary perspective that we, the audience and the reader and the viewer, get to bear witness to, right? We get a certain omniscient perspective. And this is what good filmmaking does, is it's multiple levels of synchronicities that match with the theme. Almost like all these microcosms to the macrocosm, which is the theme, which is how you do any kind of effective communication, be it a story or an essay or a short story or a novel, or you're making a movie. You have to have your overarching theme or narrative or message or story, right? And then it's supported by all these lesser stories that comprise the whole. It's like the little cells that comprise the body of the story, or the idea or the theme or the question or whatever that dominates. Or if it's propaganda, the the propaganda or dogma element of it, right? Just depending on how the art's being used, right? It can be used for good or being used for evil. It can be used to liberate minds, to get people to ask themselves questions and to expand their minds and consciousness and curiosity and experiment with ideas and to grow. Or it can be used to dogmatize and brainwash, right? But what's cool about the 2004 Peter Jackson adaptation is that it has this, concentric pattern of the theme going on, and how it communicates it gets very Christopher Nolan Inception, the more you think about it, very acid trip-like, because it's a very complicated thing to try to pull off, and he did it very well and very subtly, where these are all things I knew even from the first time I watched this film, but it's all of these unconscious, unspoken things that it's painting the world for. So it's a lot of things that you almost have to sit down and make a video essay about, like I'm doing now, right? Like you have to really sit down and I hate when people use the word unpack, let's unpack those ideas. But yeah, it's that idea. It's something you have to, it's simple, and yet it's actually a lot of complex information embedded into the simplicity. And it's showing this, once again, the synchronization of, and the interplay between reality and fiction, between reality and stories, between reality and characters and archetypes that we study and identify with, and how you actually end up embodying that which you study, you embody that which you worship, you embody that which you love, that which you want or wish to will into existence. And similarly, you embody and will into existence, just in general, that which you believe, at least to some extent. And he's showing all of those things, in my opinion, in that film. Or maybe it wasn't totally conscious, but I assume so. With a filmmaker as brilliant as Peter Jackson, he was pretty conscious to those things. And also, on film, nothing occurs that's not planned and coordinated and really scrutinized and thought about. But it made me think of filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick and many other filmmakers, where it's cool that he had this secondary story that really in a lot of ways has nothing to do, unless there's some backstory I'm unfamiliar with, as to the origin story of King Kong, which I'll admit I know a little about. It seems like he kind of pulled off a Stanley Kubrick with this film and added a sub story that matches the theme really well, but at the same time almost has it's not that it has nothing to do with the surface level story, it's that it's like going on in the background. It's ever present, but it's also ethereal. It's very cool because it's not something I'd be very interested to know more about, like a behind the scenes documentary, if it's out there, on that film, and just like what he was thinking, and was he trying to do a Stanley Kubrick thing where he's like intentionally incorporating a secondary story, because it almost feels like that. But it works thematically, just like how, once again, in The Thing, Miss Darrow loves Jack what's-his-face's work, and that's the other thing. It's like, oh, she loved his fiction, and then they met in real life, and then there's the kid and Mr. Hayes and stuff like that, right? And the kid's reading the book, and then he goes on his own adventure, just like the adventure novel he was reading, right, about a sea voyage, which they're going on a sea voyage. So there's this constant reminder that there's this very real and almost not entirely understood effect that art has on reality, and the power of the psychodrama of the mind, and perhaps it's spiritual, or perhaps it's, at the very least, in a Carl Jung sense, archetypal. Maybe it's all the above, So it generates a lot of good questions. And this, to me, is what makes not only a good film in general, but a good story, is something that it's so profound that you can't really sum up all the things that it gives you or tells you or asks you to consider in, even if I sat here and did a 12-hour video. Like, you could almost always pull more from it, and that's a sign of, this is great art, this is profound thinking, this was a profound work of art, or profound creative work of genius. And so that's why I'm such a fan of it, and not just that film in particular, there's loads of examples I could use, but I just wanted to share that, because if you haven't already seen it, it's a great film. Jack Black's in it. He's hilarious, except he's not even meant to be funny, but he just kind of is, even though it's a drama and stuff. But it's a really entertaining film. Adrian Brody, I think his name is, plays the writer. He's a great actor. And I forget the name of the actress who plays Miss Darrow. She does a great job. I don't know. I've seen her in a lot of stuff. I can't think of her name. But she should really be in more stuff, because she's great too. Great film, honestly. Great cast. It's written well, it's directed well. I think it's one of Peter Jackson's best films, easily. Obviously, Lord of the Rings trilogy adaptation. Well, you can't really top that, right? But I would say King Kong should be a proud second for him to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's a really cool story. I'd love to know more about its origins. If you guys happen to know, or if you know of a documentary, definitely send it my way, because I want to start posting more entertainment, a little bit more entertainment related stuff to the channel, because I share a lot of documentaries anyway, and it would be cool to, because I'm an aspiring filmmaker myself, to more so a creative. I do the stories and the characters, I write. I'm more of a writer, but I'd love to learn from filmmakers and storytellers and creatives like this, because it's really brilliant to see the power of cinema when it's done right and done well, and when it's taking an actually well thought out, well written story and putting it onto the screen. Like, that's a really beautiful thing to see. I don't know anyone who's seen that particular film and didn't enjoy it, And I wasn't even I'm not even a fan of the King Kong story or whatever. It's just they totally, he did such a great job with that film. He really did. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. Peace.